Well, I almost went live, and then I was like, "Oh, your whole drama. Let's not broadcast
Oh,
it,
that, yeah.
unless you wanted to." But like, I'm
Here's
not.
my phone number.
Yeah, it's beep. Wait, hold on. I can do it. It's your phone number is.
Thank you. Perfect. It's what I would like everyone to think that it is.
Exactly. Oh man.
We talked everything. We talked about everything. Now it's just time to start the episode. Now that
What a
we're live.
week of listening, though.
Yeah, it was unexpected in a lot of ways. It was very interesting.
Those are all words you're using to describe it, and I'm not disagreeing with you. Yeah, let's just go for it.
Let's do
it. Yeah.
I'm ready. In 3, 2, 1.
Absolutely not.
No.
Don't even ask me.
Well, here's the thing. There's one of them that I could easily do it with, but we didn't actually get to cover it this week. So,
well, then you know what? Let's just do this.
A podcast and also a podcast and a podcast and a podcast. I mean, it's just like a list, so I don't know any other things to include other than podcast.
Well, you could have said the name of the podcast.
Yeah, but I don't remember that.
Oh, cool. Well, I'll tell you right now. Welcome in, everybody, to another episode of Totem Talks.
That's it. I was not going to say that at all.
No, of course. It's hard to remember. This is, of course, Season 7, Episode 16. And let me tell you, it was an episode.
It was. I think we'll have some interesting things to talk about.
You're probably not wrong. I'll tell you that when I listened this week, I had less than zero expectation. I had no idea what was going to happen. And I think after listening to 6 albums, I have no idea what happened.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong. You're not wrong.
There was arguably like 2 or 3 real curveballs for me. In not in terms of like specific songs, in terms of the trajectory of how every artist has gone on this podcast. I think both of these artists were like, absolutely not. We're going to do something different.
Yeah, that's okay.
And that's all I have to say.
We
should maybe end the episode now before I have to give any of those opinions.
Perspective later on.
Later on this year for part 2 of this episode.
Right, exactly.
Good.
Do you want to say anything else, or should I tell everyone who we're covering?
I'm going to say this, Nick. Why don't you tell us who we're covering?
Oh, yeah. Well, I would love to. We're going to kick things off with a group called The Creation. And we are going to round things out with Squeeze.
Yes, we are.
And you're probably wondering to yourself, what on earth are these 2 artists being matched up for? And I was grasping at straws, I'll tell you that. But I needed to find some connections for the artists that I had left to schedule that were previously on other seasons. And there are both of these artists come with built-in 6 degrees of Totem Talks in terms of members that we have covered in other bands. And that is the way that they're matched up. That's why. That's it.
That's it. That's all it is.
And I'll try not to lean into that. Hopefully you didn't lean into that either for your 6 degrees. You didn't get lazy.
I didn't lean into it for 1 second.
Good.
I would never do that.
Good. Yeah, I didn't expect you to.
Yeah.
But I had to make sure.
Of course. Listen, of course. I understand. I understand completely because you're Nick and I'm Pat.
Yeah, something like that.
And that's what we're doing here. We're Totem, we're talking. And I guess it's time. I guess let's do it. Without any further ado, let's get into The Creation. The Creation are an English rock band formed in 1966 until 1968. Then, and this is the quote, the mid 1980s till the present day.
Just generally
There's
the mid
yeah,
1980s,
it is what it is. We
in and
don't know,
around that
they don't
area.
know, nobody knows when they got back together,
Not me.
but they did. They're like you ever have like a couple who like they break up and then you don't know when they like that's exactly what happened. You don't know when this relationship restarted, but you know they're married with 3 kids now. They seem
Mhm.
pretty happy. So
Okay.
that's all it is. And
Well,
on top of all of that information I can give you about the creation, I can tell you we covered 3 albums and they were real easy to pick.
yes, they were.
So we covered We Are Paintermen, which yes,
They
yes, you are. We Are
are, I
Paintermen,
guess.
which came out in 1967. Then we followed it up with Psychedelic Rose from 1987, and then get ready, Power Surge, which came out in 1996, and I'm so mad at them for it.
So
I
close.
I was like, just hold on to it. It's
Just
not like
about there. Yeah,
1998 where you were too late. You could have just
right.
held on to it.
They could have. Were all the people clamoring? Were they not allowing them to wait
I
the
mean,
extra year?
maybe I can tell you that I was alive during that last one and I could have waited.
I could have waited too.
So really, they messed up.
They did. But I would like to talk about them, and they're my artists, so I'm gonna talk about We Are Paintermen,
Yeah.
which, um, has an interesting cover. It's a very, like, British band of the '60s cover, like, they
Yeah.
they nailed that right down. And it opens on a cover of the song "Cool Jerk," which is actually a cool song, which most people will probably know from the scene of Uncle Frank showering in Home Alone 2, um,
Yeah.
sing along to that, but that's not this version, this is a cover. Um, and then it follows it up with their biggest song, which is "Making Time," which I am not confident where from or how I know this song, but I definitely got the feeling the whole time I was listening to it that I had heard it before.
That's important.
And I was like, "I think I'm pretty sure I know not well, but I've heard it here and there." But I can't really pin it down. I don't know if you felt that way too. Um,
I had felt like it felt familiar to me,
it
yes.
right, it felt really familiar, but not I couldn't put my finger on it. But it also happens to be a song that's famous for another reason, which we'll talk about a little bit more later. But it is one of the very first songs that ever used a guitar that was being played with a bow.
Okay,
So
yeah.
that is something to think about. And I mean, look, I don't think this is bad. It is like a mid to late '60s rock album from a band in the UK. It's got a lot of those mid '60s band sounds in it without exactly having one band. You know, like they reminded me sometimes of The Who, but not always. And I think it's probably because the one vocalist, Kenny Pickett, not quarterback Kenny Pickett, um,
Not current Philadelphia Eagles backup quarterback Kenny
correct,
Pickett.
not him. He was not in the creation. But specifically the songs that he would sing would give me like a real early Who, first like 2 or 3 albums vibe. So it might be something in his voice for that. But look, it was a good rock album. It was a good rock album from the '60s.
Yeah, I mean, not to repeat you too much, but I will. I completely agree with you. It's a good solid rock album. It's very easy to spot the date on this. The
Mhm.
carbon dating of this music is very accurate.
Yeah, and the
I
the
feel
tech wasn't great. Like, it peaked at times, and, like,
yeah,
you could tell the recording tech wasn't
which is of the time for like like an early to mid 60s band
especially
who
if you
isn't yet famous.
exactly.
That's like the equipment is cheaper because they're not as famous, and that's fine. But I did enjoy this one. I thought it was the perfect like short, sweet, to the point song length on all of these. It was like mid 60s, so nothing was crazy deep. I thought they did a really respectable cover of like a Rolling Stone.
Yeah, I agree.
which was great. I got really
And
excited
Hey
for like
Joe.
8 seconds. And Hey Joe, yeah. I got really excited for about 8 seconds when the song came on because I thought I recognized a song by them. Because like for like 8 seconds, my brain just went, "You know this song," and I was like, "Oh wait, I actually know a song." No, I don't. I don't know a song by them. I know a song by Bob Dylan.
Yeah. And we listened to the Turtles cover it earlier
And we
in
listened to
season
Jimi
1
Hendrix
too.
cover it, or I know Jimi Hendrix covered it a bunch.
Like Rolling Stone? He did it
Yeah,
a couple times. There's some live versions of it, but I don't
that's
think
what
it
I'm.
was ever on a record. I don't think it was
I
ever on, like,
probably
a
listened
studio
to it
record.
during that week because like
Okay.
some
Because 'Cause I've
artists,
heard
Jimi
live
Hendrix being
versions
one
of
of
it, but
them,
I
put me
haven't.
on a kick of that artist when I
Mhm.
listen to them.
Yeah.
A lot of artists don't. A lot of artists, when I
True.
finish listening to them, I'm done listening to them.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyway, going back in, my basic opinion is this is a band who is doing a lot of good things and they're just doing a lot of things of the time though.
Yeah, but they weren't, like, exactly akin to one other band. I felt like they were a good mixture of
Yeah,
the bands from this time.
they're classic rock soup,
Yeah.
a good blending of everything, and I'm okay with that. Moving on to Psychedelic Rose. This album is different than the first one. Uh, this felt like the creation, a nice young band of strapping young lads dropped acid and recorded an album. It's more adult for sure. It sounds like a little darker throughout. You lose the rock, or I'm sorry, the pop part of this. Like, I wouldn't say the first album was pop rock, but it definitely had like a little bit of that Brit pop bounce to it. That's gone. This is like it's weird because it's called Psychedelic Rose, which really makes me think it's supposed to be heavy
And
psychedelic.
it's
It's
not.
not a heavy psychedelic album. But it's a good rock album with that experiences a little bit more depth than maybe the first album did for me.
Okay. So I wanna give a little background.
Do it.
So this album was recorded in 1987. It was actually released in 2004.
Yes.
It had been shelved, and we're doing this in the order that they were recorded, but not necessarily released here.
Yeah.
Um, Boy, was it recorded in the 80s, though.
A
Like,
100%.
oh my god, was it recorded in the 80s, in the worst possible way for me. Um, I'm not gonna say that I hated it, but, like, the production, the guitar and keyboard
Here's
and
some
drum
cheese.
sounds, like, it was the cheesiest 80s rock music, like, doing the whole choral vocal thing for a lot of the song, like,
Now,
it was so not for me.
I need to ask you a real question here. Did you hear the sound of your own heart breaking when the album was called Psychedelic Rose, but
And it
was
was
actually like 80s
yeah,
rock?
that was disappointing, to say the least. Really, after a good first album. But yeah, I mean, this album was pretty much panned too when it came out. Um, to me, for good reason. There was one song, "Doing It My Way," which, like, okay, if you were writing and recording this in the 80s, you had to notice the fact that it started on the Owner of a Lonely Heart chords by Yes. Like when you come in with the bow, 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 like, all right, this was just a huge hit not that long ago, man. Like, maybe don't use those exact chords to start the song. Um,
Well, maybe that's one of the reasons they didn't release the album.
yeah, that could be. So I this was a step back for me, a
Sure.
pretty solid step back. But then we'll step forward into Power Surge, and it is now 6 years previous or 9 years later, depending on your perspective, I guess.
Should be 10 years later.
It should be.
Should have held
It
on
should
to it.
be. And I will say the first thing that struck me about this album was a negative, not about the songwriting or anything, but about the mixing, which was I felt that a lot of time the vocals were drowned out or they were so like equivalent to all of the instruments instead of being boosted a little bit that they were totally lost in the mix to me. Like there
Hmm.
were a lot of songs on here that I'm like, you might as well just cut them out because like I'm gonna have to strain to try to get them and then miss the rest of what's going on in the song. Um, so I didn't love that. But this did feel like it took a step back into the classic rock era instead of like the 80s sound. So um, I definitely liked this a lot better than the album in the middle. There was, did you notice there was a song Shock Horror on here?
Yes.
And it started with a cowbell, at which like randomly cut out, but it also was like out of time for a second. And it was almost like someone was like, "Oh, throw some cowbell into this." Ah, shit, he's not playing it in time. Stop, stop, stop. And then it was over.
I hope that's what happened.
Is that like
I did notice it. It did feel weird,
yeah,
but I really do hope that was what happened. And they were like, let's
me
just keep
too.
it in.
Yeah, just leave it. Whatever.
Some of those are
It's not in
great.
the budget to cut that out. So
No, no, of course not.
but actually I thought this one was a fairly solid rock record overall, though. Like this was a bounce back for me.
And I would agree with you. I do think it's a little bit of a bounce back for them. I thought the middle album, yeah, it was a little cheesy, but they were definitely growing up. And by that I mean aging. Like it felt
Yeah,
more adult. It felt a little
sure.
less influenced by the people that were influencing them in the first album. Like their influences changed, their style changed. This album was like, okay, we're not dropping acid. We went to college and we figured ourselves out a little bit. Now we're coming home and we're going back to our roots.
Hmm.
And I
Yeah.
liked that. I thought it was good. I think this band definitely has talent.
Oh yeah,
I think they
definitely.
definitely have talent. It's showcased a little better here than in the second album because you get a little distracted on the second album. And on this album, I think you get to really enjoy the songs
Sure.
as they come. There was a little bit of weirdness in shock horror. I think there was more instances on this album where they just kind of threw shit at the wall.
Hmm.
And sometimes that's like where things come together.
Yeah.
And I think that worked pretty well here.
Yeah, I agree. So it's time to talk a little bit about the creation. So I'm going to start with their highlight because I've already mentioned it, and it had to be "Making Time"
Yeah.
because that is like their closest to a hit song. Um, it was also included in a lot of media. It was in the 1998 film Rushmore. It was also in a 2017 Xfinity commercial. It has also been the theme song for a program on the television called The Great Pottery Throwdown since
I'm sorry,
2017.
what?
I
Is
don't
that
know
is that
what
a
the
British
great.
show?
It's got to be right.
I mean, that's like the Great British Baking Show, the Great British Bake
Yeah.
Off, the
Here's the
Great
Great
Pottery
Pottery
Throwdown.
Throwdown.
Yeah,
So
I'm gonna find out.
it's the theme song for that. So good for them. They've had that song, and it's been in a lot of like media within our lifetimes as well, which is
It is a
probably why we recognize
British
it.
television competition program.
Of course, it is. So, for low light, it was. I mean, you could pick the breakups and the not really putting out music and all the back and forth with that, but also they have lost several key members over the years. Obviously, the band's been around for a while. Kenny Pickett passed away in 1997. Bob Garner, who was in the group for a while, in 2016, and Kim Gardner in 2001. So they have had like several members come through that had been with the band for significant chunks of time who have passed away.
Hmm.
Unique. So this is kind of interesting because it is going to maybe clash with some other things that we've had to talk about previously. And it definitely was something that had no idea about. And it's about Eddie Phillips, the guitarist, who
Okay.
is, I think, the highlight of the group overall. For me, Phillips, he's clearly very good. And also, I mentioned way back when we first talked about Making Time, that it was one of the first songs to use a bow on guitar,
Yeah.
a technique that was, we can say, popularized by Jimmy Page. It was definitely made famous by Jimmy Page, and a lot of people probably believed it was kind of innovated and brought about by Jimmy Page. But no, Eddie Phillips was doing it first. He is the originator as far as I can tell. So,
That is very interesting.
you know, that is something I did not expect coming into this. For 6 degrees, well, let me get out of the way this first. So the creation, we know that there's an automatic 6 degrees um, with these groups
Yeah.
because that's the theme of the episode. But just so you know, for a while on lead guitar and vocals was Ronnie Wood, who, while also a longtime member of the Rolling Stones, was in Faces in the Jeff Beck group, who we've covered both, and Mick Avery on the drums from the mid 80s to 1993, who was previously the drummer for the Kinks. And actually, to tie into that, there was also a former bassist, I want to say, named John Dalton, who joined the Kinks after Pete Quaife left on bass. So the Kinks and the Creation kind of passed around members at different times in their later careers. But here's the real 6 degrees.
Yeah, give it to
There
me.
was there was a story that was leaked in the press way back in the 60s, back when press was the best way to get word out
Yeah.
about your band and whatnot.
Now,
That
for people who don't know, press is what Twitter is now.
Sure. But there was this guy named Pete Townsend,
I've
who
heard of
had
him.
reportedly been asking Eddie Phillips to join The Who as their second guitarist. However, none of that's true, and Eddie Phillips has fully denied it, and he has no idea where the rumor came from. But he did refer to it as, quote, a bit of sharp press. I think,
So I think
it
my statement was pretty accurate then.
it was drumming up some, all press is good press. A little bit of that for the
Hey.
Creation, just get their names out there for something. And here we go. The last thing is the meanest and nicest.
Oh, good.
So I struggled with this. And I thought, well, if I've got to do something, it can be the fact that a couple of these people I've mentioned were hired in the band when other people got fired and things like that. So they've had some inner turmoil and have had to kick people out, including Kenny Pickett, who then later rejoined the group. But he was kicked out when, and these are actually the three guys who have passed away. The band hired Kim Gardner to be their bassist and then moved Bob Garner from bass to lead vocals and then kicked Kenny Pickett out. And then they also fired their drummer, Jack Jones, and replaced him with a guy named Dave Preston. And then they fired Dave Preston after 3 weeks and rehired Jack Jones.
3 weeks?
Well, it actually, the article I read said just under 3 weeks.
I wonder what happened.
Something.
Wonder what Dave Preston
he couldn't have been
did.
very good.
Or maybe he was good and maybe there's something else going on.
Yeah, it could be. So that, like, they fired some of the guys. I guess that's the meanest thing I could come up
Pretty
with.
mean.
Also, if you want to talk about being mean to Canvas, during their live shows back in the 60s, they used to, when they would perform the song Painter Man, they would like spray paint a canvas like live on stage and create a painting and then light it on fire.
Huh. Probably
So
could
they
have
were
sold
also, yeah, they definitely could have. They probably still can sell the ashes.
There
There will be somebody.
I don't know if you're going to get quite as much money.
Yeah.
Like,
These
if you're
ashes were a canvas that I saw at a show by the Creation in 1968.
If you're a fan of the band and you went and saw them live, you might bid on that painting. You might be like,
Yeah.
I want to buy the painting of the show I was at when they painted it. That's
Right. Oh, I agree.
Yeah. Can you get me in touch with any members of the band that are still alive, and
I'll be right.
I'll let them know the mistake they made 60, 50 years ago.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
I have nothing else to say.
Cool. I also have nothing else to say.
Excellent.
So why don't we squeeze?
All right, I'm gonna grab a quick beverage refresher.
Oh yeah, get some apple juice.
Thank you. And order dinner.
Nice. Get some dinner.
My phone.
Nice. Get a phone.
Nah.
That last one's real. Get a phone.
Just because mine is slow and broken doesn't mean it
Yes.
isn't fast and functional.
It does mean that. All right. What's going on, Keith? I don't know if you're still here. Just gabbing about music as always.
I bought a toothbrush, some toothpaste, flannel for my face, pajama, a hairbrush, new shoes, and a case. I said to my reflection, let's get out of this place. I've always wanted to do that song. Tempted by the fruit of another. It's such a good song.
It is.
It's one of my feel good songs.
It's very interesting when you listen to the rest of the band.
Yeah,
How different that song
which
is.
I mean, I've only ever heard songs from their '80s output, so hearing only late '70s and then 2017 was interesting.
Yeah, I agree. All right.
I feel like we kind of missed out on getting a full idea of the group by not doing one of the '80s ones instead of Cool for Cats, but
Yeah, I mean, you're probably right, but the 80s ones didn't sell.
well, I mean, they had 3 that were all British silvers. There was just that other one that was a British silver, and then also something else.
Yeah, it was close.
Yeah.
All right. I think I'm ready.
All right. Then here we go. 3, 2, 1.
Squeeze. That's the name of the band.
Yes.
And they're an English pop rock band that was around from 1974 to 1982, then from 1985 to 1999, and then from 2007 till the present day.
Excellent.
So they're making it work now. They finally made it work. We covered 3 Squeeze albums. We started with, and we thank you, Squeeze, the eponymous debut, Squeeze, which was also called UK Squeeze.
True.
If you weren't in the UK, but Squeeze, it counts. We followed that up with Cool for Cats, which came out in 1979. And then we wrapped things up with The Knowledge. And the knowledge was that it was the year 2017 when the album came out. And I'll just take us right in.
Please do.
Squeeze. Here's the thing about Squeeze. This band was horny as hell. They were just horny. Everything about them is horny. The album cover is this like ripped bodybuilder. The band's name is Squeeze. The album's name is Squeeze. And their first song is called Sex Master.
Mm-hmm.
And their second song is called Bang Bang.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
let me be honest with you, all of the songs had a sexual undertone to them in a way that I wasn't expecting. Uh, then you get to the music.
Oh yeah,
And here's what I'll tell you, this band wasn't afraid to be a little weird,
that's true.
just a little weird throughout. I didn't dislike any of it, but I definitely couldn't get over just a bit of the weirdness, like weird rhythms at times, weird sounds. There was like a song, I'm pretty sure it was on this album, where they were just kind of like moaning for a little bit.
What's wrong with that?
It was this album really yelled to me that this band was just horny. Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook were just horny because they're the ones who primarily wrote the songs,
Okay, so I
and
gotta say,
that's what I got.
so I gotta ask you, did do you know why they wrote the songs that they did for this record?
Other than being just horny as hell.
No, it's so totally different. So, our good friend of the show and unintentional 6 degrees here, John Cale from Velvet Underground,
Oh yeah. Oh
produced this
yes.
record.
Yeah. You're
And
you're you're jump. No, you're stopping it. Don't stop what you're doing.
okay, so don't say anything about what he encouraged them to write about for this.
I mean, you can. I guess you can tell them.
Because I was going to say that I think explains a lot of this album to me
It does.
in a way that like kind of affects my take. I won't take steal your thunder, but essentially like thematically or like the headspace, the approach that they took for this record was largely because Kale told them to do that, like try writing songs that, with these themes when it's like, oh, this had never really occurred to me before. And
So Kale told them to write songs about like muscle men.
yeah,
That's that's what it is. He told them to. He's like he basically said their songwriting was soft and to write harder songs. And I guess they interpreted harder to mean their
virile.
dicks.
Okay,
I
we're
know.
both going for the same thing. I just was a little less sophisticated than you in my
Yeah,
understanding of the
that's
problem.
okay.
And look, I felt like the record was a little inconsistent because of that. Because I
Sure.
felt like a lot of the writing just didn't feel natural to them. It kind of felt forced. Sometimes, not that there weren't good songs or good parts of it. Like the guitar playing, I think was consistently good on this record. I think there were times when they were almost hitting the like post-punk new wave rock of like say a Blondie as a
Yeah.
comp on some of their songs musically, and that's a good comp. Like I like Blondie. Blondie's a good band. Um, but that's pretty much all I have to say about it. It was to me a little inconsistent. Like thematically, going back and reading like that they were challenged to write about things that they. It's like okay, maybe that just like wasn't this group's identity. Um,
Sure.
and then we pass an entire year, and we have Cool for Cats. And here's the thing about Cool for Cats. This is inexplicable. I think there was a hole torn in the space-time continuum because the cover of this album is literally the most 90s thing I have ever seen in my entire life.
100%.
Like there is no way that this was created outside of 1993. I don't believe it. I just don't. It's uncanny.
I guess the guy who really popularized that style in the 90s really loved Squeeze.
Like he saw the Squeeze album cover and was like, okay, I need to make every design from here on out for at least this decade look like this.
Every design, every poster, every math textbook, every
Uh-huh.
roller skating rink carpet,
Totally.
all of it.
Totally. Okay. Now there were also songs on this record.
There were, yes, correct, yes.
Less importantly, honestly. And this didn't grate on me nearly as much. I think musically it's still very similar. It's still like that type of rock of that late 70s era. Most of the songs are 2 or 3 minutes. Like there's nothing crazy going on there. But there's evidence of good songwriting within the songs here. There's again evidence of good guitar playing. Um, for power pop, which is a genre, I guess you could call this, that's never going to be super high on my list. I think it's a good record. Even though there were times when it kind of just struck me as silly.
Silly is a great phrase.
It's silly.
Because this album is silly. It's goofy. Here's what I'll tell you. I know that I told you on the first album, this band's just super horny. And Nick was like, no, their producer was telling them to be horny. Well, he's not producing this one, and their first song's called Slap and Tickle.
Well, you don't know what they're
Ah,
inferring.
Slap and Tickle. Track number 3, Touching Me, Touching You. And the
That could
lyrics
be
on
about
that are
anything.
about him touching himself while thinking of her.
Yeah, but
Those are the lyrics.
Cool
It's
for
literally like,
Cats
I'm
is
touching
about
myself
cats.
and thinking of you. That is the lyrics.
Honestly,
Up
based
the
on
junction. You tell me what that's about.
well, I'll tell you the one that
Slightly
seems
drunk.
the one that seems the dirtiest to me, based on the fact that we listened to 3 of this band's albums previously on the podcast, is The Knack.
Yes, well, that's true.
Because that they were something
How about
else.
the one that precedes the Knack? It's so dirty.
He could just be washing the dishes.
Look, all I'm telling you is this band's horny.
Look,
Chris Difford and Glenn Tilbrook are horny. And Jules Holland with Hop, Skip, and a Jump, I don't know. You might be horny too. Musically, it was fine, but it was weird. And this, like, unlike the first one where I was like, they just did some weird things. This is an album of weird things that sometimes do normal things. It's got that like new wave power pop to it. But if you were to tell me that this band was like almost trying to be avant-garde at times, it was so off-putting, I would believe you. And for that reason, I'm out. But I'll move on to the knowledge. And it turns out what the knowledge was how to write songs. Because this album was way better. That is what I said when I spoke earlier on the episode, and I said both of these bands subverted expectation. The first band subverted expectation by not releasing their middle album until the mid 2000s. So they recorded an album in the 80s. It didn't come out to the 2000s, and it was by far their worst album.
Yes.
This band chose to have a career where the albums we listened to previously were weird as hell, and then they apparently have just gotten better as they've gotten older. Which most bands that we've covered, once they hit their around in the 60s and then also around in the 20 teens.
Yeah, I mean, for them it was 70s, but still.
Yeah, but still, you know what I'm saying. What I like, this band got stronger. The rock feel of this album felt more consistent. They have like a little bit of country in there, a little bit of Baroque in there. It's feeling good. The album is slightly less horny, as in every song didn't make me think they were trying to smash. There was a couple moments. There's a song called Rough Ride, which I wanted to be a little
Could
more...
be about anything.
Yeah. Whatever. Innocence in Paradise. There's still some horniness that they have to work out. Difford and Tilbrook got to work it out a little bit still. But overall, the sound is more mature. The sound is more cohesive. I think the talent has not diminished. If anything, the age in Tilbrook and Difford's voices have both lent themselves to a calmer tone that I think fits the style of music better. And for that reason, I'm in.
Yeah, I think this was the best album we heard this week. And it was really well reviewed because of it. I agree with the critical reviews on this one, actually. And here's another thing. I also really like the cover of this album. It was giving me like I Spy book vibes and going in and trying to see what was in each compartment of the head.
I like it.
I felt like this had some of that reflective late career stuff in it that you like to see a lot from bands that have reached this point. I feel like the songwriting is very creative. I really like a lot of the different genres and instrumentations that they throw in. This album I was pretty much liking right from the start, but it grew on me more and more and more as it went. Um, there were some songs in here that kind of gave me, to give them another British comp, like a late Arctic Monkeys vibe. If you think of Arctic Monkeys just from like the Tranquility Base Hotel and Casino and The Car, their two most recent records, songwriting that maybe would fit in line with that that type of style and sound. To the point where I was like, I'm 50-50. Like, if you guys are thinking about hanging up the guitars at this point in your career, this would be a great career-ending album. But if you're not, like, I'll listen to the next one you put out because I like this one that much. So,
Yeah, I think that's very aptly put. Which means
okay.
I'll talk a little bit about Squeeze. So first thing I'll talk about is sort of our thematic 6 degrees that we talked about, which for me was former members of the band. So we'll start small. Don Snow is known as one of the former keyboard and backing vocalists of this band. He was in it for a time, for a number of years. He was also at one point in Procol Harum, which
Right.
we did cover on the podcast.
That's
If
right.
you forgot, Nick. So then on top of that, we also have Pete Thomas, who is well known as
PD.
working and being the drummer for Elvis Costello, also covered on this podcast.
Mhm.
And then third and final in this section here, Andy Newmark, who was a drummer for such acts as Sly and the Family Stone. He also played with George Harrison and John Lennon and Pink Floyd and David Bowie.
That's a hell
Just
of
a
a career.
number of people. So that's number 3. Now I'll talk about the unique thing. And I was struggling for a bit. I found a thing about their name that I'll talk about a little bit. That's pretty cool. But the unique thing I found for me was in 2010, Squeeze released an album called Spot the Difference. And it was all re-recorded versions of older songs where they like invited fans to spot the little differences in the song and in the mix of the classic versus the
Hmm.
new recording. And I think that's pretty
Interesting.
cool. It's an interesting way to do
Yeah.
a re-record because a lot of artists do re-records, but I
Yeah.
think it was very interesting to really highlight and point out like we want to know what you spot that is different.
Yeah.
So I thought that was pretty cool and pretty unique. So highlight. I could have gone their hit. You know, they did have a hit in the US, which we didn't get to cover, which you sang a little bit on the off the air, I think. But that's
Off
okay.
and
You can
on.
sing it to me anytime.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to just talk about their albums. I didn't want to talk about Cool for Cats. I didn't want to talk about the singles that they've had success with. Those are all things we've already talked about and we are going to be assessing in, our scoring.
Mhm.
A highlight for me is this little story that I found. So basically, in 1985, they had been broken up for a number of years at this point. They broke up in 82. So 3 years they broke up. The 5 members of the band from the period where an album called Argy Bargy came out,
Mhm.
they all got back together. So Difford, Tilbrook, as we talked about, Jules Holland, and then 2 other members all got back together, performed at this charity event, a one-night charity event, one-time performance, and they got such like a rush from doing it and such positive feedback. That's what made them decide to
Huh.
reform.
Nice.
Which I
I
think that's
love
a
it.
pretty cool highlight. Like you get back together for like a one night thing and it's so
Popular.
successful
Yeah.
and you feel so good doing it that you get the band back together.
That's
That's
cool.
pretty cool.
I agree.
The lowlights, I did put the lowlights because this band, unlike The Creation, has not experienced the number of passings away of major
Right.
members of the band. So the 2 breakups are the big deal. So the first breakup being the bigger deal. In 1999, the second breakup, they just kind of played a final gig and broke up. Like just kind of the band had run its course. Difford and Tilbrook both had separate solo careers going on right after that band broke up. And then we know they did get back together, and there is no third breakup as of yet.
Right.
But the first breakup was kind of shitty because like It's the early 80s, 1982. They're really kind of hitting their stride, their initial stride of success. And they just started running into like a bunch of negative reviews strung back to back, which caused a bunch of inner conflict. Also, like they were really stressed from touring, and it just led to Difford and Tilbrook just breaking the band up. They were done, no more band, which that kind of sucks.
Yeah.
It's good to know that only a couple of years later, once those stresses kind of eased up, they played one more time, had such a good rush from it, they got back together. So that's the low light for me. I could not find a meanest thing.
That's always good.
I did look, could not find a meanest thing. But the nicest thing, in November of 2022, the United Kingdom, as the rest of the world did, went through a cost of living crisis. And the rest of the world and the UK all continue to go through that. But
yeah.
the band announced that the proceeds from their Food for Thought EP would be donated to food banks, and they asked all their fans that attended their UK tour to bring donations for the Trussell Trust.
That's very cool.
So that's a pretty awesome thing that they did.
Absolutely.
And now 6 Degrees. I luckily have more than one because you used a lot of my initial one.
Sorry. It felt like integral to my understanding of the first album.
And it was. I was purposely skipping over it. The band is named after the 1973 album Squeeze by Velvet Underground. And John Cale of Velvet Underground produced their first EP and album. They were good friends.
Very cool.
So basically all of Squeeze is related to the Velvet Underground.
Gotcha.
But also in 2019... Squeeze were joined at the Louisville, Kentucky Bourbon and Beyond Festival for a performance of their 1982 hit Black Coffee in Bed.
Oh, that's the other song by this band I knew before we started.
Yes, and the person who joined them was Dave Grohl.
Oh, cool.
Who we have covered a few times at this point. Mm-hmm.
That's a good one.
It is a good one. Love Dave Grohl.
And the song, too.
And the song.
Dave is a good one. Song is a good one.
All good. All good stuff. But that's all I've got for Squeeze. Those are my Squeeze facts.
Excellent. Well, then I guess it's time to move on and give out some grades.
Let's do it.
So, starting with cultural impact. So, The Creation. They sort of have a song, but they do have a little bit of influence. They have been cited by a handful of bands, especially because of the guitar playing of Eddie Phillips and the introduction of the idea of using the bow on guitar. A handful of important guitarists have definitely cited him as an influence. They also had a full record label that was named after them. Like they had nothing to do with it, but the record label Creation, which has given us such artists as the Jesus and Mary Chain and Oasis, to name ones that we have covered on the podcast, was their namesake.
First one.
Oh, the first one sucks.
Hold on. I got it.
Yep, that's them.
Just the entire first album.
Yeah, wasn't a fan of that.
No.
But anyway, I mean, I'm just trying to give you enough reasons to give them like a 1, I guess.
Would you settle for a 0.9?
Yep.
Yeah, that's fair.
Squeeze,
I think giving them a 1 is a little tough.
I get it.
Okay, so Squeeze though.
Yes.
They do have a couple songs that you could call hits.
I would definitely refer to Tempted as a hit at least.
Yeah, I think they have a number of minor hits and then one moderate hit.
More in the UK, from my understanding.
Yes, more in the UK. More in the UK with the minor hits. The moderate hit did reach America, which we didn't cover, but you have talked about multiple times. The other thing that I love about this... Okay, now, Nick, I need you to roll with me here.
I'm rolling.
Have you ever heard of a film starring Dane Cook called Good Luck Chuck?
I may have heard of it. It's a very
the plot of this film
protagonist.
Was Good Luck Chuck was like quote unquote cursed is in his mind because he would date these girls and they would dump him and then marry the next person they dated.
Okay.
He was like the catalyst for them getting married.
Gotcha.
This band is similar. A list of artists who have opened for Squeeze: Dire Straits, REM, U2, XTC, The Jam, like a number of
Okay.
pretty famous bands
Sure.
who all got their start by opening for Squeeze.
Okay, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. And then some artists, the biggest one of which that I'm seeing on this list is the Killers, do reference Squeeze as like their influence or one of their influences.
That's not nothing. I mean, I think that the answer to this question is somewhere between 2 and 3.
I would agree with you on that. I think it's probably closer to 2. And by that, I mean like maybe like a 2.4.
And I've already typed it in.
Love
So
it.
here we go. Breath of
Love
Dark.
it. Wavelengths, man.
Right? The Creation has 3 albums. They start with a 2.5. There is certainly no evidence that they have sold.
No, there is
So they are
not.
going to lose probably as close to the half point as a band can get. If anything, you can make the argument that they only lose 0.4 of it because they have a song that's recognizable enough that it must have sold some copies somewhere.
Yeah. I'm fine giving them the 2.1.
You got it. I don't know how to feel about giving them points because the second album really spoiled what could have been like a 0.1 for me. I don't think I'm going to do anything.
How about this, Nick? Here's what I think will help you.
Okay.
We really could have taken away 0.5 there for them not having sold anything. And
You're
I
right.
think we each gave them a half a point.
I love it.
And that combines, all of that combined to give them that 2.1.
Yes. Okay. Squeeze. 15 albums.
Yeah, slightly more than 3.
Slightly more than 3. 5 times more.
5
A
times
full
more.
5 times more.
So if you want to do that 2.5 times 5.
Yeah,
If that's
something like
really
that.
so
That's
it's
I mean,
12.5.
Yeah.
So they're going to start with a 12.5 out of 10.
Yeah. And then sales, I don't know what you're getting. I have one source that says that they have sold approximately 1.99 million
Yeah, I mean,
total.
you can kind of look at the various like records they have, like the certifications. Yeah, I mean, 2 million sounds about right.
So that would be enough for us to do nothing. Or
Which I'm
it's 2.5 million
fine.
in total sales is
What you're
our
reading?
threshold.
Yeah.
So they
So
might have to lose 1.
let's take away a 0.1. I think that's fair.
Okay. They're your artists. What would you like to give them?
Oh man. Here's the thing. Just the first 2 albums, I would have probably taken away a 0.1.
Interesting. Okay.
The horniness really bothered me.
See, I didn't hear the lyrics, so
The lyric horniness, it wasn't like the right, but you can write horny. I want to be clear. I'm saying horny so much this episode because of Squeeze, but you can write that and still have it like make sense and be like, like let's get it on. Like there are songs where it's like sensual and good. This is just like odd.
Yeah.
But the third album, I probably would give like a 0.1 or maybe even a 0.2 if the albums were all styled that way. Really enjoyed
you.
it.
So,
And I think for that reason,
brings
they're
you-
going to just stay neutral.
All
to
right.
me.
Well, I'll give them the 0.1 because I really like the last album, and I know I like some of the stuff in the middle. Instrumental talent. I think that both of these bands, while not crazy impressive, did show something here. I definitely heard above average talent from both guitarists, which is sort of where my ear leans most quickly.
Sure.
So I would be willing to be talking in the low 5s for either group.
I think both are in a similar vein in that case. I do think if I had to give the edge to either one for just sheer talent,
Mm-hmm.
I would probably give it to The Creation.
Okay.
I thought the creation had a little bit more like cohesive talent
So here's what I'm
throughout.
going to do. I'm going to give them a 5-3, and I'm going to give Squeeze a 5-2, and we're going to go into songwriting.
And I love that.
So 2.5 is our threshold for the creation, 3 records. And I think that the good of the first and the last album outweighs the bad of the middle one. But I also that means they stay where they're at or go up a tiny bit.
Yeah. Here's the number. I'll tell you right now.
Okay.
If we were talking an album, a 6 album band, I'd be looking at like a 5.5. I think they're above average, but not crazy. So 5.7, 2.7.
2.7. And then Squeeze. Squeeze, I would say songwriting is the best part of this group. I think
Yes.
just compositionally, I think in terms of being able to draw from a lot of different genres and write for different instruments and styles. This group is like, that's clearly their bread and butter, and I think that this is a good score. This is not just like, yeah, they're a little bit better than ever. I think Squeeze is at least in the 6s.
And I would agree with you. And I think they're really benefiting from the fact that we separate the lyrics out of the songwriting. Because I
Yeah.
think this is a band where the songwriting is strong, the experimentation, the uniqueness of the sound. I think they do a good job with all that. And I really like how they've aged as a band. I
Oh,
think their
totally.
style of music has really like just kind of situated itself firmly in the groove of music that I like.
Oh yeah.
And and it didn't start there. So I like that. I like their progression. I think in the 6s is a great spot for them.
Yeah.
I think
And
you could
I'm leaning
probably,
upper.
yeah.
I'm
I was
like
gonna say like maybe like a 6.6 or 6.7 even.
6-7 it is.
I love it.
And then poetic talent. I don't know, man.
The creation fall slightly victim of to their time period
But that was only
of
one of their albums.
yeah. With the first album, the
Yeah.
third album falls still a little victim to their time period, as in still in the 70s
Yeah.
range,
Yeah. No,
where,
I agree.
you're kind of overvaluing songs about love and you're kind of over indulging in a little bit of those like metaphors,
Yeah.
which to us are a little burned out. And considering this band, like, this band started in the 60s, but by the 90s, those metaphors were already played out.
Yeah.
But I
So how
still
about
think, yeah, go ahead.
2.3? Like a little bit below?
Let's do a 2.4 because I do think they're close to average.
Okay. Very good. And then Squeeze. Well, you love their lyrics.
I just think
You
they're
just
so
find them so
oddly
relatable.
horny. I don't get it. Like, I'm all for I'm all for songs of that nature, but like make it fit. Like it just feels like you're forcing the issue
Yeah.
a little much. I
In
will
their
say
defense on the third album, I thought that there was some good
right. And so that
reflective,
I would
writing.
agree. I think the third album really redeems them in my eyes. So for that reason, instead of giving them the score that I would want to give them, which starting from a 5 for average, I'd be looking in like the high 3s,
Sure.
the mid to high 3s. I'm instead looking in like the mid 4s.
How about a 4.6?
Let's do a 4.6.
X Factor, the only thing I could possibly think of for the creation is the bowed guitar thing. We've been milking that though.
But I mean,
them.
we didn't put it further. We talked about it, but we didn't actually give it any scoring.
Yeah, I mean, I would probably just do like a 0.1 for that.
I
It's
think a
not like it's a
0.1
super
works.
common technique or anything.
Yeah.
And then is there anything that you have for Squeeze?
No, there's not.
Excellent.
Well, the only thing that I'll give
Oh.
to Squeeze is you and I's collective shock at finding out that a former member of the Roots is now in Squeeze.
Yeah, that is interesting.
So
Unexpected.
yeah, just Owen Biddle, who is a former bassist and backing vocalist for the Roots, is now the bassist and backing vocalist for Squeeze.
Okay.
Just not worth X Factor points, but a fun little tidbit of information.
It definitely is. Okay. Well, then here are the final scores. And winning this week's episode Is Squeeze with a perfect 25. Exactly right
Congratulations.
there. Yes. And then in second place is The Creation with a 13.5. So a good bit
Yeah,
of separation there for Squeeze. The album's definitely made a big difference there.
for sure.
And don't, before I forget, next week, tune in because we'll be looking up and going, what's that coming out of the sky? And that's
Yes.
our theme.
Yep, it's a great theme.
I think so.
I'm proud of you every time, Nick. Every single time.
Today was a little forced, but next week it's a little bit better, I think.
Oh, gotta love it.
You do.
All right.
Well,
Yeah.
have a great day.
Is it a question? Are you questioning it?
I don't know. Is that still what you want for everyone?
Listen, no matter what, even when you're listening to music that is a little too horny, and maybe even especially then, have a great day.
And rest in peace, OJ.
More like rest and piss.
Oh man, I almost couldn't do the show. I was so affected,
I know.
so upset.
Oh
And
man.
oh my god, when I first saw it, I played it to Jackie like I don't even know how I'm gonna tell you. Okay, I'm so sorry. Someone has passed. It was OJ Simpson. She was so upset.
Of course, I'm sure she was heartbroken.
Oh yeah, she's a
Just
big
wild.
Bills fan.
Yeah, I mean, they got to be the only people left that don't hate him, right? Maybe even they hate. I mean,
Yeah, I don't
I
know.
don't know. I'm not going to speak for Bills fans, but I meant
He-
if people had a reason to not dislike him,
Yeah,
it might
right.
be Bills fans.
That's true.
Crazy
That's
times.
probably
Man.
it. Who would you like?
Oh, I don't know. Who would anybody like?
I don't know.
Who do you want?
I guess if I had to choose, I would pick the one that was not identified.
Ah, the one. Yeah, of course. Well, that's fine. You can do that then.
All right, I'll take it. And my dinner has been on the front porch for about 8 minutes, so I am
Oh,
going to have to
nice.
go at this point. And also,
Perfect.
fuck this fucking asshole in the chat.
Oh, I removed the
Yeah,
comments
fuck
already.
that guy.
Yeah. Hey, listen, man. If that's what makes you happy, if that's what it takes, good for you. I couldn't
This should be for
possibly
Keith
care less.
only.
Yeah, this chat is for Keith only.
Yeah.
But hey, whatever.
Okay.
Alrighty.
Adios.
Adios. Cool. Well, I guess that's it for me too. Everybody just enjoy yourself. Go listen to your favorite album this week. That's what I'll tell you. Whatever album your favorite is, your favorite artist, your favorite album, give it a listen. You know, we could always use that enjoyment in our lives. Other than that, I got nothing else for you. Have a great day.